I'll read it myself. That way the many-headed family tree of modern thought. Philosophy is often presented as a family tree. One thinker influences another, who influences another, and eventually we arrive at thinkers of our own time. But Gilles Deleuze gives us a reason to imagine this family tree differently. For Deleuze, inheritance does not mean obedience. A philosopher does not simply reproduce the ideas of his intellectual parents. The most interesting thinkers take what they inherit, transform it, distort it, combine it with something unexpected, and produce something new. The result is not always a healthy child. Sometimes it is a monster. This is one way of understanding Deleuze's approach to the history of philosophy. Rather than treating philosophers as isolated geniuses, we can see them as participants in a vast intellectual genealogy. Hegel gives us dialectics and philosophy of history. Marx takes Hegel's dialectical machinery and turns it towards capitalism, labor alienation, and material life. Nietzsche attacks inherited morality and asks us to think in terms of forces becoming the creation of values. See, I don't even agree with that, but that's what ChatGPT says. Then another branch appears, Freud. Freud places the unconscious at the center of modern thought. The rational individual is no longer completely sovereign over himself. Beneath consciousness are desires, conflicts, memories, and forces that can disrupt the story that the ego tells about itself. Jung inherits Freud's revolution, but takes it somewhere else. The unconscious becomes populated with archetypal figures, symbols, shadows, and autonomous psychic forces. His Red Book records his own extraordinary confrontation with this interior world. But Jung is not simply Freud's child. He becomes another kind of offspring. And this is where our family tree begins growing additional heads. Marx and Freud can be placed on separate branches that eventually approach one another. Their descendants begin asking whether human beings are shaped not only by what happens inside the psyche, but also by capitalism, institutions, family structures, ideology, language, and social power. This is part of the intellectual territory inherited by Félix Guattari, the psychoanalyst and political thinker who would eventually collaborate with Deleuze. Together, Deleuze and Guattari produce Anti-Oedipus and later 1,000 Plateaus, the 2 volumes of Capitalism and Schizophrenia. And here the family tree begins to mutate into something else entirely. In the opening of 1,000 Plateaus, they write, since each of us was several, there was already quite a crowd. The sentence is almost a manifesto. Perhaps the individual is not a single trunk with a few branches. Perhaps every person is already a crowd of influences, desires, memories, languages, relationships, institutions, histories, and forces. This is where Jung and Deleuze can appear together on our intellectual map without pretending that they were saying the same thing. Jung explores a psyche populated by multiple figures and autonomous forces. Deleuze and Guattari, push toward a different possibility. Perhaps multiplicity is not something that occasionally interrupts a unified self. Perhaps multiplicity is what we were all along. And this leads to Deleuze's rhizome. A tree has roots, a trunk, and branches. A rhizome spreads in multiple directions. It connects unexpected points. It has no single center and no privileged beginning. So our family tree of modern thought eventually stops becoming a tree. It becomes a rhizome. Hegel leads to Marx, Nietzsche leads somewhere else. Freud leads to Jung, Lacan, and other descendants. Marx and Freud eventually encounter one another through new generations of thinker. Guattari connects psychoanalysts to politics. Deleuze connects Nietzsche, Spinoza, Bergson, Marx, psychoanalysis, literature, and science into an entirely new conceptual machine. The goal is not to preserve the family. The goal is to create new children, and the best philosophical children may be monstrous, recognizable, traces of their ancestors, but transformed into something their ancestors never imagined. The many-headed family tree of modern thought is therefore not a museum of intellectual ancestors, it is a breeding ground for ideas.